Well, we're here together again this evening to talk about Buford Pusser and the other story. Uh, we've talked in the past about a lot of the things that Buford told about were not really accurate. A lot of the legend is just totally, totally false. And with me here is Earl McCoy. His father, Kenneth Wayne McCoy, was the alleged sailor that Louise Hathcock was supposed to have murdered at the White Iris with the ball peen hammer. And I think Earl is going to help straighten us out on part of that story. How are you doing, Earl?
Good. How are you?
Oh, doing great. What can you tell us about your father, his early days?
Well, he was born and raised in Walnut, Mississippi, and he went to after high school. He went to Northeast Mississippi Junior College in Boonville, Mississippi, and after I guess his second year at college, there was a Navy recruiter on campus, and he stopped by and talked to him, and basically found out that they had a program called the NAVCAD program, where if you had 2 years of college and qualified, you could join the Navy to become a pilot. And so that's basically what he ended up doing. And he left Mississippi and went to Pensacola, Florida, and started flight training in I think it was August of 1955. And he trained and went through primary flight training there. And then after primary flight training, he went to basic jet training in Memphis at NAS Millington. And then from there, he came back to Pensacola and did his advanced jet training, and then got his helicopter qualifications and so on and so forth. And he basically from there went to, with the helicopter squadron, went to Opama, Japan for a few years. I think that would have been about 1958, 57, 58 time frame. And then he came back, I think out to El Toro, California in 1959, 1960, where he met my mom. And then they got married and had my brother, my older brother. He's 12 years older than me, Kenny McCoy. He was born, I think, he was born in California, and then from there they went out to Hawaii, where Dad was flying some jets at Kaneohe Air Base in Oahu, and he ejected out of an A4 Skyhawk in 1963, and it was pretty violent ejection, and landed in the water and got picked up by a helicopter, and so he always said
had quite a history.
Yeah. So he said that was one of his biggest regrets, is because jets were new it was a new era, the jet age, and he had a couple buddies of his or friends of his that were killed, and they were killed in jets for mechanical reasons. So after he bailed out or ejected out of the A4 Skyhawk, he requested to go back to flying helicopters.
Okay, but if we can, let's backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
He was from Walnut. I guess he was home on leave when he made the trip to the state line area.
Yeah, and I don't know, that would have been, I think that was, I don't know if he had actually, it was sometime after probably basic flight training. It may have been the time in between, because I've got like a history, and I forgive me, but I printed it out and left it at work. But I was looking through the gaps in time that I have of different events and stuff and different eras when he was training, and there was like a 6-month gap from when he, I think, completed primary flight training to when he started jet training.
Yeah,
and that would have been like he completed primary training. I think it was November of 1955, and didn't start his training, the basic jet training, until I think it was like June of 1956. And I think the book that I had originally, the Ghost Tales of the State Line Mob by Robert Broughton says, I think it said something like January 1956. So that timing works out as far as like some of the.
Okay, let's talk about that for just a moment. He ends up at the state line, and can you tell us what he told you occurred there?
So he always just, we never really talked in detail about it, but he used to say, he was a hotshot pilot just out of flight training, and he got his tail kicked by Towhead White, and he used to just tell us that, tell us about the movies Walking Tall, and that Buford Pusser carried a big stick, and that his main rival was Towhead White, and that was the guy that basically whooped up on him. But what he basically told us was that he was taken in a crooked card game, and he had some words with Towhead, and I guess they ended up, like, I think when I talked to you a couple of years ago when you were writing your book, I wasn't sure if what I recalled was that they went outside the bar, and I was just thinking it was like out in the parking lot. But after talking to my brother, and I think you interviewed him, what my brother recalls, and it seems to make more sense, and kind of reminds me that that's how the story was, is that they left the bar and went somewhere away from the bar, on the side of the road somewhere. And what dad said is he opened the car door, and that was the last thing he remembers. He got hit in the back of the head and woke up in the hospital in Memphis. And he always figured he got hit with a tire iron.
Do you know if there was more than just Towhead that made this little trip away from the bar to have this fight?
No, he just always mentioned Towhead, never mentioned anybody else.
Okay, that brings us up to Louise Hathcock. Did he ever reference Louise Hathcock in any of this? She was the one that was supposed to have beat him to death with a ball peen hammer.
No, he never talked about her. I mean, I read the books, and she may have been in the bar that evening or that afternoon, but he never mentioned that as part of the story telling us. It was always just Towhead White.
One thing that people aren't aware of, or a lot of people aren't aware of, is that all of this was said to have happened at the White Iris, there on the Tennessee side of the line. The only problem is the White Iris wasn't built until the early 60s. Telling us that this happened in the 50s, mid-50s, 55, 56, which is about the time that Buford was a high school boy, like that he told people. Problem is that the White Iris wasn't built until the early 60s, which makes that part of the story impossible, that it occurred at the White Iris. And you're also telling us that Louise Hathcock wasn't involved in this brawl at all, even though she got the credit for killing him. Tell us what happened to your father after the fight. I mean, I know he was hospitalized, but you tell your version of it.
Well, I believe that he was hospitalized in Baptist Hospital in Memphis, and I think it was for approximately 30 days. I think he had one, if not two, broken legs, some broken ribs, and I think he had a wound to the back of his head that required a bunch of stitches.
Oh.
And I think my brother recalls that and Dad used to talk about that he was very happy that a JAG officer came down, and he had the support of the Navy, but a JAG officer came down and investigated. And I don't know if it was from the JAG officer or the doctors at the Baptist Hospital, but they surmised that he probably got run over, that after they beat him or whatever, that they took off and just drove over him, which is how he got the broken legs.
Oh, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because on the photo that is here, he's on crutches.
Yeah. And I wish that there was something written on the back of that photo because, I can only surmise that that's probably at the time that he had the broken legs. But of course, his face doesn't look like it's bruised or anything. And that, it could have been, 6 weeks after and he was still, still had a cast on or whatever, still on crutches. But yeah, I had remembered seeing that picture, so I found it and sent it to you. But yeah, it doesn't look like he was beat up real bad. He looks pretty happy, but that could have been 6 weeks after it happened.
Sure, but to go from there, of course, his naval career and Marine career continued on after that. And you were telling us earlier that's when he went through several types of training and the service he had in Vietnam, so on and so forth. Correct?
Right. Yeah, so when he went through the Navy and flight training, he was in the Navy, and then after he got his wings, they offered him they could either remain in the Navy or go into the Marine Corps. And he had a cousin of his that was in the Marine Corps, and he thought that would be cool, so he transitioned in the Marine Corps, which is part of the Navy. But so he went from being an ensign in the Navy to a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps, and then and that's how I know that might confuse some people because we talk about him in his dress whites and sailor and all that stuff, but and then we talk about him being a Marine, but yeah.
And he flew helicopters in Vietnam.
Yes, he did.
And then transitioned to jets later, I believe.
No, he had flown jets in training and advanced jet training, and then he went through helicopter qualifications and started flying helicopters. And then when he went back to California, he had some refresher training in jets. And when he went to Hawaii, it was to join a squadron flying jets, flying the A4 Skyhawk. And then it was after he ejected that he requested to go back to flying helicopters and remained in Hawaii flying helicopters with HMM 161, the Pineapple Squadron. And that's what he basically was on his shore duty with the 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines as an air liaison officer when they shipped out to Vietnam. He used to talk about having all this training to be a fighter pilot and attack pilot, and his trip into Vietnam and his first taste of Vietnam was climbing down the side of a ship, cargo net, down the side of a ship and getting into an Amtrak and assaulting the beachhead. But they basically secured the airfield at Chilai, or it was a stretch of land at Chilai, so the Seabees could build an airfield. And so he was there for about 6 months on the ground with the grunts, and then got transitioned back into his helicopter squadron and flew helicopters for the remaining time he was in Vietnam.
And then after he got out of the service, I understand he opened and operated a business there in Pensacola.
Yeah, so at some point when he was in California, he came back to Memphis and went through maintenance officer school. So when he was in his squadrons, he was a maintenance officer. And so after he retired in 1968, he opened up an air tool company in Pensacola, right there where he retired. He was his last few years in the Marine Corps was as a land survival instructor back at NAS Pensacola. And so when he retired, he started the business there in Pensacola, and my brother's running it now. My dad passed away in November of 2012, and
that's hardly 1956, huh?
Yeah.
Well, all right. And you say he was aware that he was part of the Pusser legend?
Well, he never really said. My brother said that he had a book one time, and I actually asked my brother a couple weeks ago to see if he could locate the book, but he didn't remember it. But he had told me that there was a book in my dad's apartment that we found after he died that he said it was something about the Dixie Mafia. But he never said anything. He just, told us he got beat up by Towhead White, which was Buford Pusser's main rival. But, I don't know if he'd ever seen the book or, I don't know if the Dixie Mafia talks about that. I know the 12th of August talks about it, and then the Ghost Tales of the State Line Mob, a book that I've looked through, talks about it, but I don't know if he'd ever seen it.
That's actually something that we're going to get into at another time is on the Dixie Mafia, because, there's a lot of controversy there. There wasn't really a Dixie Mafia per se. A Mississippi investigator, Rex Armistead, was the one that coined the name Dixie Mafia because he wanted to a means to identify all these Southern criminals as being in a mafia-type family. And so, he called them the Dixie Mafia. Other law enforcement agencies picked up on that, as did the media. And they started referring to all these loose-knit band of Southern criminals as the Dixie Mafia. And, the rest is pretty much legend. I will say that out of all the people that I've researched regarding the Pusser story, is that Towhead White, in my opinion, was the only person that truly earned the reputation that he had, because he was one mean guy when he wanted to be. And
right. I'm
your
sure my dad would agree with you.
He took on one of the best as far as that goes. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we close?
No, I think that's it. I appreciate it.
Well, now we have it, another part of the Pusser legend that, has been dispelled. Earl, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you sharing your father's history. And
anytime I can talk about my dad, it's always a good time. So I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Well, thanks for being here, and we will catch everybody next time on another episode. So, everyone, just remember, the truth has no agenda.
Appreciate it.